Monty, I would like to say, well, welcome, but it's not my studio. I usually say welcome to my studio, but man, this is a beautiful place. As soon as I walked in, the cafe, everything like that, and you come up here to the studios, I've never actually been in something like this. It's just my garage. And when people come to my studio, they're like, what the hell am I walking into?
Yeah.
Because it's like, fuck, am I ever going to walk out here alive? Because you walk through and it's like this dingy gym, and then you walk into the studio and they're like, fuck, I would not expect this. But here you expect it, and thank you for welcoming me, and the service and everything like that. It's amazing, bro.
Oh, thank you very much.
For people who don't know who you are, right? Because as I said before, social media, the portrayal of your life, people put on, I guess, the highlights of everything.
It's a bit of a show.
Yeah, a bit of a show. With this podcast, and what I love to do is actually dive deep into who the person is. Yes, business is a part of your life, but there's so much more to who Monty is. And that is where I want to start. For the people that don't know who you are, what is the context that they need to know about you to better understand the man that sits in front of me today?
Sure. Thank you. First of all, welcome to Bali, and thank you for the kind words. I've seen your podcast, obviously, and it's actually impressive. Like, you know, what you've done in the garage is impressive. You know, when you're looking at it online, you could be anywhere. So, well done on that. Who is Monty? Starting with now, like I'm very immersed in Bali. So I live here. My partner is half Indonesian. I'm really into the Balinese culture. I lived in Japan before. I've had businesses in the Philippines. So for some reason, I've just gravitated towards Asia. Mm-hmm. And I've been here close to 10 years. So that's the first thing. I'm a surfer.
Yeah.
And, you know, Bali, it's a healthy lifestyle here. You know, that's a big part of what attracts people to come to live in Bali. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I'm really into looking after myself and eating well, which is really easy to do here. And, yeah, I've kind of, I guess, crafted a life for myself here in Bali around my values about how I really want to live. And this place that we're in now, there's 3 studios here. There's a cafe. We're expanding. I'll show you the building next door. We're building like co-working and offices and stuff.
Yeah, okay.
And all of this was really just kind of made up, right? I saw a need in the market in 2019 when I wanted to start my own podcast, but I wanted to do it kind of at the level that you started at, which is, you know, with multiple cameras and good microphones.
Funny. You say I actually started in a spare bedroom in my parents' house on a cheap ass microphone and my dodgy ass laptop.
Yeah.
It was only the last 12 months that I've progressed into the studio that I have now. So I understand the journey of starting from kind of nothing and building up. And we actually started around the same time. So 2019, probably. The back end of 2019, I started when COVID and everything was starting to eventuate. And yeah, at the time, I was all in on rugby league. Like, that was the dream. As I mentioned to you before, the world kind of shut down.
Yeah.
The season got cancelled for me. And I was like, what am I going to do with myself?
Yeah.
And I decided to go all in on this podcasting, which I had no clue about, never really knew too much about podcasting. But I thought, you know what, I'm going to give it a shot. And for me, you probably may or may not pick it up, but I'm like naturally shy, introverted. I never used to be able to have conversations with people. I'd let like anxiety just overcome me. And I knew that I needed to make a change. I needed to dive headfirst out of my comfort zone. And this is my 5th year of podcasting now, nearly 300 episodes.
Wow.
So I understand the journey and I respect it, because from when we started, there's not many people that are continuing it on.
Yeah.
And you may see it with this studio here yourself, people that start podcasts and they think, I may be an overnight success or it's going to be so easy, but there's so much that goes into it that people don't understand it.
Yeah.
And that's why they give up. Like, the stats are like, not many people make it past like 10 episodes or something.
Yeah.
So for us to be here today, and how many episodes have you done?
To be honest, I've been pretty inconsistent.
Yeah.
So I launched, I think, in 2021, and I did like 50 episodes. And then what actually happened is when I opened here, I stopped because We got so busy, I got pushed to the bottom of the... It's a real momentum thing, right?
I'm finding that myself
It's a real
now.
momentum thing, but you're 100% right. It's like you just got to keep going. But I guess it's the same with most things in life, right?
Yeah, that's it. And when business takes off, I guess your priorities kind of change too. And that's
totally.
a period or a season that I'm going through right now, building my own studio back home. That's why I can relate. I'm like, I love my podcast. I love connecting with people, but obviously the money is what builds your future and allows you to do podcasting. So like if you can get to a point where you have that income coming in and you can kind of pull back a little bit from the business and then focus on podcasting down the track, that's going to be a way better approach than just going all in on your podcast and not having any money on the side, because it's a very expensive hobby if you want to do it at this level.
I think a lot of people are, come back to me talking about me, but this is good because I think a lot of people are, especially now, sold on the idea of, you can just, find your purpose and live your passion and you just go straight into that. And I think a lot of people come unstuck, I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with having a job, making money and working on the side on what your passion is and getting it to the point where you're saying where you can, you can more gracefully swap it over and feel comfortable in doing that. There's nothing wrong with that. Like that's, I think it's a smarter approach.
Yeah. Well, you hear all the time, burn the boats. Yeah. Right. You only hear that from the people that it worked for. What about the other 90% of people that failed and, sometimes they were so passionate about this business and they went all in on it, didn't work out, and now they're just broken and they don't pursue anything else after because they didn't go about it the right way. And in a way, like it's hard when you're young and you're full of ego and you're like, yes, this is going to work. But have a bit of, mindset sense around you. Like it's going to take time. Anything worthwhile is going to take a long time to develop and to grow.
Yeah.
And if you just be patient and just trust in the process, I know as cliche as it is, just trusting in the process and enjoying the journey, not being so outcome focused, because if you just focus on the journey itself, I think that's what makes it beautiful and enjoyable.
Yeah, 100%.
So many people get so caught up in the outcome, and then when those outcomes don't come and the expectations are not met, they just go downhill very quickly.
Well, the outcome will never happen the way you intend it to happen. It's always going to be different, some variation of different. So like for me here, I had never intended, it was never like, I'm going to start a podcast studio. It was like I was looking for a way to do it myself. And then through that, I saw an opportunity because Bali's like the center of the world for content creators. Like people flock here, people who are life coaches, tantra teachers, yoga instructors, business coaches and consultants of all kinds. So Bali, there's a lot of gravitational pull of education and content and stuff. So, and I was really surprised that it didn't exist here. So, and my original intention was just to build a small studio about a quarter of the size of the cafe downstairs, about half the size of this studio. And then I was like, well, I really love coffee. And so I really like just expensive ass coffee machine with 6 chairs on it so I can invite my friends and like you rent out the studio when I'm not using it. And then I ran the numbers on it. I'm a numbers guy. The modeling works. So let me see what happens if I kind of ramp it up. And then I found this property. And then it all just kind of happened from there. And I think that is, that's kind of how I've lived my life. I've been an entrepreneur since I was 8. I had my first business when I was 8, cleaning boats in Sydney Harbour.
Yeah, really?
Yeah. And I don't think that I've ever really been, passionate about like one thing and then started a business about that. My business before here was an outsourcing company in the Philippines. Did that for about 8 years. And I started that quite early when outsourcing was kind of coming alive, and it was just an opportunity that I saw. So it's not like I'm passionate about rugby league and then opened a rugby league store or merchandise store or something. I think I just look for opportunities and figure it out.
You like the process of like startups?
I really love the creation part of it. And this has taken me, I'm 47 this year. So as we all figure out on these entrepreneurial journeys, we figure out what we're good at and what we're not good at and what we should be working on and what we shouldn't be working on. And for me, I really love the process of the ideation, the creation. I can raise capital, I can do business modeling, I can do all that. I'm very good at that. But then when the business is up and running, then I tend to get stuck in the business. And then it's like, that's been my repeated pattern. And it's happened again in this business, which is fine. Like it's all cool. Like the business is awesome. I freaking love it. But it is, it's a process to kind of to really get to a point where you can get yourself out of it. And then the game is, can you just do that faster every time? Right. Last time I never got myself out of the business. It was quite, successful business, but I never really got myself out of it until after about 6 or 7 years. And now the goal for me is like get myself out as quickly as possible. When I say out, I mean out of the day to day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I can just focus on the big pictures.
Working
big
on the
picture
business,
stuff.
not so much in it.
Yeah. We've got plans for global growth and more studios and, like I said, building next door and stuff. So.
Yeah. Wow. And you mentioned you started your first business when you were 8. Where did that entrepreneurship mindset stem from? Was your dad entrepreneur?
Actually, it's the absolute opposite. It was out of pure, I'm not going to say maybe desperation. I grew up on a boat in Sydney Harbour, and when I grew up in Sydney, Balmain now is it's fancy, right? It's expensive. But where we had the boat, it wasn't even at a marina. It was in the bay. And where we were in the bay, it was commission housing.
Yeah.
Waterfront commission housing. It was pretty crazy when you think about it. But Balmain was rough. It was inner city rough. And my parents were very young, so we lived on a boat because we couldn't afford a house. So, and I remember we used to wash out of we didn't have a shower. We had this little red tub, and I would stand in the red tub, and Mum would boil water on the gas stove and then pour warm water on my head, and that's how I'd wash. We didn't have television, didn't have video games, didn't have any of that stuff. So I grew up quite, I'm going to say, poor by Australian standards, right? Now, obviously, as an adult, I have perspective to say that, okay, I had it better than probably 97% of the rest of the world. But yeah, as a youngster, I really had a lot of judgment about the fact that we didn't have what other people had. And it really fucking bothered me.
You were angry at the world?
I was angry. I was angry at my parents. We didn't have a television. I would go around to, this is in the 80s, right? And go around to a friend's house for the weekend or something, and have big colour television and a VHS player and even maybe video game like a Nintendo or something. And we didn't even have a television until I was 10 or 11. Then when we did, it was a black and white television, and the batteries on the boat would die.
Yep.
So what would happen is the screen on the television would shrink as the batteries go down, right? It's like living in a caravan.
Yeah.
So I was very mad about that. And I think just from a very young age, I just realized that if I want something, I have to create it myself. So when I was 8, I remember having the idea of maybe I could clean people's boats. The waterline of the boat where the seaweed and the barnacles grow, if you keep it clean, then the barnacles and the seaweed, won't get out of control. So Mum helped me to write some handwritten little flyers, put them in plastic bags, left them on the other boats, because most of the boats in the bay were just pleasure craft for other people, and they might come and use it once every 2 weeks, once every month or whatever. And I think any 8-year-old who puts themselves out as an entrepreneur, people are just going to say yes because it's an 8-year-old. And I don't even know how much I charged. It was a couple of dollars to clean it. And it was hard work. I'm in a 6-foot dinghy as an 8-year-old scrubbing seaweed off the side of a boat. I don't think many parents these days would let their children do such a thing. In fact, they might even be arrested.
Yeah.
But that was, I think, maybe the seed that was planted for me of, okay, I can come up with an idea for myself. I can execute it by myself, and then I can get rewarded for that. Like, that was kind of the seed planted for me. And since then, I guess I've always been entrepreneurial. So I've had very few jobs. The last job I had was, I worked in bars when I was like early 20s and late teens and stuff. Besides that, I've pretty much always done my own thing. And that was all born out of me being an angry kid, angry at why do we not have what other people have, so I have to figure it out myself.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
It's a different side of the spectrum than what I'm used to hearing, because a lot of the people that I get on, a lot of them actually have grown up with nothing, angry at the world, and they usually go down a path of crime and violence and destruction.
I did plenty of that.
Yeah. But like, these guys have ended up in jail and everything like that. Yet you had the mindset to actually go out there and, start a business. It's not really heard of.
Yeah. That being said, when I was 11, 12, I was starting on a path of crime.
Yeah. Okay.
I remember breaking into houses and stealing stuff. It was never like just my idea. It was, or the people, like, I just had bad friends as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember feeling bad about it. I remember doing it and feeling bad about it, but that was my surroundings. And we moved from Sydney when I was 12, we moved to Queensland. And in hindsight, if that had not happened, my life, I'm very sure, would have been very different. So I'm very grateful for that. But yeah, one of the things we would do is go around to the bigger boats, and we would steal the dinghies and the outboard motors. And so that was certainly in there. But I remember when we moved to Queensland, I was like 12 or 13, and I started surfing. And I think that was the thing that like really changed me. And it was around that age that I was like, I can channel this energy into something more productive. So I always had a job when I was a teenager. Like, I worked in a butcher's shop when I was 13, and always making money, always had the ability to make money, and I was inventing things. So my grandfather was a big influence on me. He was very encouraging, but my mother and my father, it's not that they weren't encouraging, but they didn't really have any valuable lessons to give me. They didn't see, this kid has an entrepreneurial spirit. Mm-hmm. Let's see what we can do to help him. They just didn't see it. So I don't have any bad feelings about that. But so it really was mostly just figuring it out myself, for sure.
In a way, that's a huge blessing, I guess, when you sit here and you reflect on that, because you see a lot of kids these days and they're given everything. They're on laptops, iPads, everything like that. And then as soon as they go into the real world, they crumble because they can't handle any sort of adversity or them actually having to go out there and work for stuff. So for someone like yourself that wasn't really given anything at all and you had to go out there and work for it, yes, you may have had to grow up a lot quicker and you may not have gotten a childhood in a way, but it's made you into the man that you are today. And I'm sure you don't have any regrets or hard feelings about that.
None whatsoever. I'm yet to be a father. Congratulations, by the way.
Is it on the cards for you?
It is, yeah. But I certainly would do things differently, and I would want to give my children more opportunities, taking some of the ways that I had to learn myself and how to weave that together with making sure they have enough opportunities.
Yeah.
So
that's what it's about. It's about the opportunity. It's not about giving them everything. It's like giving them obviously the necessities, but like providing the environment, the the place for them to learn, to explore, to grow. If they want to start a business, it's like, okay, cool, I can help you do that because I've been there, done that. Or if they want to get into videography or podcasting, it's like, I've got a studio, you can come here and learn. It's creating that foundation for them to grow upon themselves and to become the best version of who they tend to be.
Yep.
And I think that's, well, my job as a parent anyway, is to do that for my little girl.
Yeah.
And all the dads out there should be striving to do the same.
Yeah.
Because there's a great saying out there, like, anyone can be a father, but not everyone can be a dad.
Yeah.
And that's turning up, building that foundation, leading by example, being the man that you need to be for your family, for your kids. Not many men are doing that.
Yeah.
And
Well, I don't think many have been shown.
yeah.
Like, yeah.
And I think that's why so many men do struggle.
Oh,
Like,
absolutely. Yeah.
you look at the youth or like the teenagers and the early 20s back in Australia, like this, the suicide rates are so high.
Yeah.
I'm curious, over here, is there much talk on suicide and men's mental health? Is it a thing here?
In terms of it is, but I think it's different to Australia.
Yeah.
So here in Indonesia, depending on where there's, like it's different if you live in the city. If you come from Jakarta, it's a different thing. If you live in Bali, it's a different thing. But Bali itself, people here they live in villages.
Yeah.
Right. And that's something that I believe humans are supposed to live. They're supposed to live in a culture of, village, right?
Takes a village to raise a child.
Yeah, where you are being supported by the community around you, and they're also very spiritual, right? So they have a lot of spiritual practice, a lot of discipline in that, and they're very happy people. You won't really see, I don't know if you've seen, but homeless people here in Bali, like local homeless. Like there's very few.
Yeah, there's a few like buskers and stuff, but
yeah, but
not
if you
many.
go to Jakarta or somewhere, it's like it's very, very, it's very different, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's different to Australia, because in Australia, a lot of it is born around just the need to keep up. Like the way that society has been molded in countries like Australia is like, if you can't have your own house and have a high-paying salary job, then you're not going to be able to keep up, and like that's massively going to affect you, right? Like that's, I think, a lot of the struggling, the suffering, mental health issues is just people thinking that they need to keep up with everybody else. And now I think that that's a cultural, societal thing which has been put on people. People have been brought up into that and they don't know any different. So it's not, of course, it's up to individuals to help themselves get out of the situations. But I think there's some problems with culture in Australia that doesn't support, that makes it so that people get more easily trapped in that. And I think that doesn't really happen here.
No.
It happens less here. People are just really, of course people want more, but people are very happy to live simply here.
They're content.
It's like, I mean, if you go out to the islands and stuff, and there's like just kids running around on the beach, and they don't have phones and iPads and all this kind of stuff, and they're the happiest kids in the world, So there's something to be said for that. And I'm not saying Indonesia good, Australia bad, but I think that as a world, we need to figure out how to merge all this together, How do you take these factors from places where people are really happy and somehow pass it on to developed places? I think there's a lot of issues happen in developed countries in that regard.
And I think that's why it's so important to travel and to
Yeah.
open your eyes and see different ways of living, because it really does shift your perspective. Like my driver, I was having a conversation with him on the way here, and he has 3 kids in a village. He said it was 12 hours away by bus. Every couple of months he goes and sees them. And he's just like, that's his life.
They make very little here too.
Yeah. And it really puts life into perspective. Like, I couldn't imagine being away from my family for that long, and then being a driver all day and just to send my money back. And it's like the things that we take for granted each and every day, like the small things, that's what's most important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And it really does shift your perspective on life and gets you thinking like, is building a business and all these big things, is it really that important? Because at the end of the day, we're all going to die, right?
Well, or it's more like having clear perspective on, or having a wider perspective on why you're building the business. You know, it's because people generally get into business. I want to make this amount of money. People generally just want to make a certain amount of money. It's like, I need $250,000 a year to live life the way I want to live it. And some people can go and work on the oil rigs and do that. But they have problems as much as everybody. So the big question is, like, why are you trying to make that amount of money? Like, why are you trying to build a business? So there has to be, as you're saying, some emphasis on the journey, you know, like enjoying the process, like really enjoying the process. And that's hard. That's hard. It's a tricky thing to figure out how to do that when you're just caught up in the day-to-day and not having enough. But yeah, humans are weird because it doesn't matter how much we have, it's not enough. So yeah, that's the game, is like figuring out how to be okay with what you have. And if you can get that perspective, then I actually think it's easier to reach those places you want to get to, because there's less mental barriers in the way, you know?
Yeah, and it's not about like settling for nothing. Like if you have nothing, it's like obviously still strive to get to where you want to strive for, but understanding like if you just focus on what's truly important to you, family, connection, health, the business and stuff will come off the back of that.
Yeah, that's the energy that's behind it. That energy that I had as a kid of, for me to survive, I have to go and make money myself. That doesn't work as a 46-year-old. That does not work as a 46-year-old. It got me to a certain point in life, it worked, but for me to be happy and enjoy life, that's not an energy that I can live with. Like that's a pathway to a short life. You know, that energy that is behind that. You see some very successful, like you see people online and Instagram and all this kind of stuff, and they're making lots of money and, hey, look at me. And you can just kind of tell that they are still stuck in that energy, right? And it can make money. There's no question about it. But like, are they really enjoying life? Are they really happy? Like some of these people just look very angry, you know?
For you, when was that energy shift where you went from, you know, that little kid that basically had to survive to now thriving and chasing that happiness and that fulfillment?
Oh, I don't know that there's any one tipping point. Honestly, it is a constant journey of looking at that. I get mad about something every freaking day.
We're human.
It's like, you're running a business, there's always going to be frustrations, and I'm always battling that with myself. There's been some moments, of course, where actually last year was quite hard. So I'll give you some backstory. My previous business before, it was fairly successful. When I exited, it was making me money, decent money for doing nothing. Like I was kind of out of the business, and every month I had more than enough money coming in for doing 5 hours a month, right? And it's like, okay, that's some pretty good level of success. There's still a lot more levels to go to. This is back in 2020. And then when COVID hit, I was able to keep that, but I was able to live an even healthier life. Like Bali was the freaking best place during COVID, man. It was unbelievable. It was freaking awesome, because there was hardly anybody here. There was no traffic. As a surfer, it was just magical. And I was really just focused on my health and really focused on my daily practices. I was really like in a flow, and I was making money. And that money was supposed to keep happening whilst I built Lighthouse. That's kind of part of the reason why I was like, yep, okay, I'm going to tip in some of my own money, go get investors, and I still had that income coming through. That was never supposed to stop. It was only supposed to grow. And then I did a merger with another company. That didn't go as planned. And then the money pretty much stopped. So last year, being this is a new business, I'm not taking money out of the business. And we're having ups and downs, of course, and I'm investing. So I was pretty skinny last year, like probably the skinniest I've been in, I don't know, a long time, decades, in the tens of years. So it was pretty tough. And I had some physical breakdowns, like, I mean, on the floor, in a fetal position, crying and like just shaking. And so I had some hard moments last year. And I think it's moments like that, just the more of those that I have, it gives me this little bit of extra insight into how I should be as a human and what is most important. And I don't know that there was like those moments. It's not like something massive shifts. It's more like it just gives me this insight of, okay, I've really got to focus more on my daily practices. I've really got to go back to this. And everything, all the lessons always lead me back to who am I being every day? How am I showing up? And how am I treating myself? You know, am I surfing? Am I meditating? Am I doing my breathing exercises? Am I doing all these things? And when I can get all of that right, then everything else seems to work. And it seems like everything else just kind of flows around that. So the goal for me is continually crafting the life where I can just continue to live like that. And when you have moments where you're not making any money, it's like the brain just wants to go back to the 8-year-old and like start smashing down walls and work harder and harder, which takes it off track from where you're actually supposed to be going. So that's the journey. It's like how to have just more and more moments where it becomes like a straight path rather than going here, then going there, going here, then going there.
Yeah.
So
you mentioned times where that little 8-year-old comes out and that anger and that frustration. Have you done much inner work and building a relationship with that little boy?
Dude, I've done a lot of inner work. I've been working with shamans in Peru. I've been doing plant medicine. I did plant medicine the first time, I think, about 12 years ago. I found that to be very good access for me, because it's a slap in the face. It's like, hey, dickhead, this is how you're being again, right? Because I think it's just a slow degradation. And it's like the saying I like to use is you can't see the picture when you're living inside the frame. And I think sometimes you just need to be slapped around and go, this is how you're being, this is how you're acting, you're doing this again, this is what's important. So I know I'm not selling it very well, I'm not, but I've found plant medicine to be very powerful for me. And I actually think I'm never going to say it's right for everybody, but I think it's a very powerful tool, and I think it can really open up eyes, and it has certainly for me. So that's been one of the things that I've used for the inner work. But yeah, I've done a lot of. I mean, Bali's a very spiritual place. And you cannot, like, if you live here in Bali, you can't really avoid it.
Yeah.
Like, it's really hard to explain, and maybe you've heard people talk about it. I think the average person who comes to Bali for 10 days and, they stay in Canggu and they're here for partying and all that. They're not really going to be exposed to that so much. But if you spend extended times in Bali, you will come across something, and I think it's just kind of a natural part of life here. And the deep work comes also with the spiritual practices. Because for me, I've been in situations where I've been at a temple with, you could say, a medicine woman who's like a priestess, and, doing some rituals and stuff like that. And it might sound a bit weird. And I don't need to, I'm not a ubud woo-woo kind of person. I don't need to sell this as being something I do. But that is a big part of my life, and doing things like that. And I've had experiences where I've left my body and, all sorts of stuff. And then in those practices, sometimes some deep healing happens and some, trauma release stuff. And then there's a lot of body work stuff that I do. And so I think part of the reason why I gravitate to Bali also is because of all of that. It's really just a lot easier because I'm exposed to it so much.
Yeah.
And my partner, she's a world-renowned hypnotherapist.
Yeah, okay.
She's got a 6-month wait list. People travel from all around the world to come and see her. So you can imagine what our day-to-day conversations are like. It's like there's no escaping for me on doing the deep work, doing the daily practices, making sure I'm working on myself. There is no escape for me, which is scary sometimes, but it's also, I know it's my path, and that's why I'm here.
The thing is, you say there's no escape, but the reality is you're heading straight into it. A lot of people are escaping through drugs and alcohol, whereas you're facing it. And I was listening to Graham Hancock last night, and he was speaking about, alcohol and drugs, like you can easily go and get that stuff. And the reason he thinks it's legal is because it shuts your mind off. You're not going to ask those deeper questions. You're not going to try and connect or open the gate to your higher consciousness.
Yep.
Because all drugs and alcohol does is just close the gate, and it numbs the pain, and it just gets deeper and deeper and deeper. Whereas if you gravitate towards the spiritual way of life and doing meditation, breath work, because you can get these psychedelic experiences just from doing a really deep breath. And I've experienced that myself too. You don't have to go do ayahuasca and mushrooms and all that kind of stuff. Like there is different access points. It's just finding what you're comfortable with, but at least you're gravitating towards that way, because it is going to allow you to ask questions that a lot of people are scared to ask. Like you look in Australia, everyone's on their devices. They can't for 1 second sit in silence with themselves. There's always something going on.
Yep.
And as soon as it comes to them being with themselves, all this anxiety or this depression comes up. And it's like, is that the way our society is, that we just can't even build a relationship with ourselves firstly? It really is sad. And that's why I love places like Bali. Now, I've only come here twice now, but even the small things of, they put the flowers and the scents out front of every shop, like the small little signs of the energy and the spirituality, it's like, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And
you look at the streets, and coming from Australia, you see it and you're like, these people don't really have much. But as you said previously, like they're happy. They're content with their life. Yes, they're striving for more to provide for their families, but they're not angry. Yeah. There's no fights and stuff all the time like back home. And it's a very peaceful.
You know what's really interesting is whenever I go back to Australia, and I haven't been back much, but between 2013 and 2019, I would go back several times a year. And I'd always rent a car at the airport. I'd drive up to the Sunshine Coast, see my family. It's like the moment I get in the car, it's like I have road rage. Like the moment I get in the car, I want to put my foot on the gas and I want to punch somebody. It's like here, people are cutting in front of you. People are like merging here. It's like chaos.
Organized chaos. It's
but
crazy.
Somehow everybody just stays like somebody will cut you off on the corner and all you'll get from them is a smile. You'll get they'll smile at you, like they'll give you the biggest smile as they're cutting you off. And that's just how it is here. In Australia, if somebody did that, they would get out of the car, punch the windscreen, and it's like, how did we get like that?
Yeah, even like the honking, like just to let the person know that you're there. If you did that in Australia, it's like, why are you honking at me for?
Here it's like in most Asian countries and a lot of places in the world, the horn is to let people know that you are passing, you're coming through, that you're nearby. In Australia, it's like you hit the horn when you want to fight. It's like, get the fuck out of my way.
I wanted to ask, like, why do you still do business? Because you have multiple businesses now. You could probably possibly, especially living in Bali, you could pull away if you wanted to and just live a luxurious life.
Yeah.
Why do you continue to do business and grow them and start new ones?
I ask myself this question sometimes. I've wrestled with the idea of why can't my mind just be content with opening a coconut stand on the beach and me just selling coconuts on the beach? Why can't my mind just be okay with that? And I think I'm okay with the idea that I need something to sink my teeth into. You know, I need some big project. I think, I've argued with myself a lot about that. Why can't I, just retire or whatever? I think one of the way that I grew up, really having to figure stuff out myself, part of it is like an addiction, right? And that's the part I wrestle with. Like, what part am I doing that is just an addiction from the past? And what part of it is, I'm really freaking excited about this and this is fun. Now, as I mentioned before, I really love the creation part of it, like the idea, the ideation of it, doing the modeling of it, building it. So I love that part of it. But my pattern has been, all right, I get stuck in the business. So the goal for me is, I don't think I'm ever going to stop with businesses, but the next phase beyond this would be me only doing it with other founders who will be the ones running it from day one. Like, I will support them. I can be their partner, but I will, the challenge for me is to be able to hand over the reins to somebody right from the get-go.
More so investor.
So investor, advisor, because there's also a control element. Like when you see downstairs, it's like everything runs well, everything's smooth here, the people are trained well, and that's because I'm here putting in a lot of effort. But it's also a controlling factor, right? So the next game for me is, how can I have businesses like this to run without me being in it? Like, that's the next stage. I've already proven I can build successful businesses. I can have them run very well, but can I do that without me? That's kind of that's the next stage. But that being said, I do often, probably every day, wonder, why can't I just be content selling coconuts on the beach, So,
and you mentioned, like, obviously you want to have kids down the track.
Yep.
You think once you do have kids, you'll pull back a bit more and relax?
I'm sure there will be an element of, I've thought I would like to have the opportunity in the first years of their life, especially, to be available, just not be feeling like I have to run to the office or something. So I think if I had children right now, I would be very present. But that's certainly the goal, to have the opportunity to be available, as available as I really would want to be.
Yeah, I think that's so important, because when you'll find out soon, they grow up very, very quickly and you don't get that time back. So for me, it's just being as present as possible because, you don't get that time.
Yeah, and look, I've got friends who I've witnessed, and I guess it's a blessing in disguise that I'm last with a lot of my friends because I've seen the struggles they've had as entrepreneurs, like really, really struggled to change their habits and their lifestyle from busy entrepreneur to becoming a parent. I've learned lessons from other people as well, that's for sure.
I'm curious, when the time does come, what are some of the lessons or the values that you would love to instill into your future kids?
Yeah. I think the part about my journey that I am grateful for and that I'm happy for is the it's not so much. I certainly wouldn't want my children to have that feeling of need and desperation, in creating something. But being able to raising them so that they can create something for themselves, they can fend for themselves, they can survive in this world without their parents. I think the phrase, not the phrase, but people often say, it's my job to guide these children to becoming, the best humans. They're not my children. They don't need to follow me. My job is to guide them to be the best they can. So that would be one thing. And one thing that I guess I have, one thing that I think is underestimated in this world of success, there's in the world of personal development, success, and all these conversations that you and I, and probably most people listening, are exposed to and paying attention to. One thing I think is not talked about enough. People talk about mindset. So, okay, well, sure, mindset, great. But the determining factor behind anybody's success is their level of self-esteem. And self-esteem is the reputation you have with yourself. And that reputation you have with yourself is based on how much do you trust yourself to follow through on the things you say you're going to do, right? So if you say you're going to wake up at 5:30 in the morning and you wake up at 6 a.m., you do not trust yourself. And then these are just little seeds planted. And over time, it's not really noticeable. But when you wake up at 5:25 and you wake up at 5:20, it goes in the opposite direction. And you develop a self-esteem where you can back yourself and trust yourself. So then if I want to start something, I want to start a new business, I know I can do it because I have said I can do things before. I backed myself and I followed through with it. So I believe myself. And people talk about self-belief. Okay, well, sure. But where does self-belief come from? It is the reputation you have with yourself. So I think that is the most important thing that I would want to figure out how to instill it in the next generation. Like how, it's not about believing in yourself or the right mindset, yes, but that to me comes from the self-esteem that they have with themselves. So how do I nurture their self-esteem through them believing in themselves, by them saying they're going to do something and then following through? So then those seeds are planted for their self-belief.
Yeah, I think it comes down to discipline and accountability. I think they're two big things. And I always refer to, even my own journey, as I mentioned before, I was like the shy, introverted kid who really couldn't communicate. And, people say, write all these affirmations down and repeat them every single day. And it's like, that is not going to get you too far. You've got to back that up with action and put in the repetitions. So with my podcast, my first episode was terrible. I'm sure yours wasn't too good yourself too. So, but by just starting and putting in the repetitions week after week after week, you build this backpack of evidence of, hey, I can actually do that. And that just converses into like confidence of you backing yourself. You have that self-esteem of, I can walk into a room, I can have this conversation because I've done it so many times now. Yet so many people are not willing to put in the repetitions.
They're looking for the big thing.
Yeah.
It's like, if you want to go to the gym and you want to get strong, people are looking for the steroid version of how to get big rather than the 5 years of waking up early, going for a walk, going to the gym, eating properly. People don't want to do that. That is the pathway to success in all fields of life. But people are looking for the steroid version so that they can get strong in 3 months, you know?
Yeah.
People want the shortcuts.
That's it.
But the shortcuts might make you look good for a couple months, but then you're just going to get fat.
Yeah. Well, like I can't train unless I'm training at like a beautiful gym. I can't start a podcast unless I have a set like this. And I went to a gym the other day, really old, rusty equipment. All the floors are ripped up. All the locals are training there. And I'm like, they don't give a shit. They're just in there putting in the work. And you see their physiques and they've been working on them for years. And it's just like, that's what it is. It's about the repetitions, the discipline to turn up each and every day.
Yeah.
And as we say, like not many people are willing to do that.
Yeah. I think some of those things help, right? It's like, sure, there is things that you can do to make you inspired and motivated. So when people want to go start in the gym, usually it's like, it's coupled with a diet. It's coupled with supplements. I'm going to take this thing, and this thing. But the supplements are the things to overcome the inertia to get moving, but they're not the things that get you the long-term results. But then people put power in that. It's like, oh, I've been taking creatine for 2 years. It's like, okay, that might have helped you in the start to get moving, and maybe it's like 0.0001%, but that was just a little carrot from the start that helped you get on a path where you now have consistency. So sure, use carrots, but yeah, it's without the consistency, there's no lasting success.
You speak about in business around, you know, being a conscious leader and being a conscious entrepreneur, and you say entrepreneur harmonics.
Okay.
What is that about? Because I read that on your website and I was very intrigued because it's a different outlook.
Okay. So this is stuff that I was coming out with in like 2020. It's like, and it's not something I have fully developed and fully put out because I kind of was mapping this stuff out and then I got really immersed into Lighthouse. And this is something I want to go back to someday. But really I was just, I guess, come out with a framework which I feel works for my life. And that is, people like structure. And what are the elements of the structure that can help you move to a life where people talk about balance. Me, I don't know about, I don't necessarily like to talk about it as balance. I like to talk about things being in harmony. So there are times when I am going to have to work hard. There are times when you are going to have to work hard. But are you doing all the other things in your life as well that make it so you stay in a flow, right? One of the things one of the parts of that is talking about vitality. And vitality is, there's a physical component, and that is me looking after this vessel and making sure I eat well. And I do all the things as much as I can to stay healthy and vital. But the other part of vitality is understanding what is not vital to you, right? And you talked about alcohol and drugs. So as a human, I would love to be able to get to a point where I can say no to more things if it doesn't serve me. So there is no upside of me drinking alcohol. There's no physical upside. The potential upside, my partner, she's like, oh, you need to be more social. And it's like, okay, so maybe there's an upside to me going out with friends and having a glass of wine, but it's not the alcohol that's serving that, it's the social environment. But it's understanding what is vital to me and what is not vital to me, and eliminating as much of what is not vital. And this is the approach this is what I used to teach people in outsourcing. It's like the whole purpose of getting a virtual assistant is removing the 80% of your day, which is not vital to you, and you focus on the 20% that is vital, right? And how do you take that approach to your life, and and then making sure you're doing audits of yourself. Like, what am I doing that is not vital to me that I could remove? What am I not doing that is vital to me? I often find myself going through phases where, like, oh, I haven't been meditating as much. That's one thing that is, or breathing, or doing some qigong or something like that. Like, these things are the things that I know is vital to me. It's going to help me have more vitality. People don't often relate all these practices and these things into the same world as being a successful entrepreneur, because the measure of being a successful entrepreneur is, how big is your business? How much money do you have? How much money are you making? How big is your exit plan? All this kind of stuff. That's generally the measure. But I'm quite sure within myself that, because I don't really aspire to build a $100 million company or $1 billion company. That's, sure, that would be great, but it's not my greatest aspiration in life. My aspiration is, how can I have a successful business that has me have financial security and abundance that allows me to do anything that I want to do in life. Like, if I've got all of that met, if I could go to the Maldives next week and stay in a luxury hotel for 7 days and there was no barriers for me to do that, I'm going to feel like I'm successful. Now, how do I couple that with all the other things in my life? And I think if more entrepreneurs took that approach to their lives, I think it would give them a different perspective in how they operate in business, but I think they would also actually get closer to the life they want to live. And I think we're just so oversold on, to be successful, you've got to make this amount of money. And there's nothing wrong with making money. Like, I love it as much as the next person. But how do you create some harmony between that and all the other aspects in your life? And as an entrepreneur, it's not easy. It's not. Like, it's a tricky balance. So what are some of the tools and some of the things that you can do to keep it all in harmony?
I had this conversation the other week actually around business and the misconception of, people want to get into business to build these $1 million massive companies. They don't understand the sacrifice it takes to get to that level. And I think what it is that the business that we're speaking about now is, like, say, 200, 250 grand a year. Like, that's achievable in today's age. Yet people don't achieve or don't strive for that, because if they don't achieve it, like, they'll feel bad about themselves. But if they set this massive goal, $1 billion company, and they don't get it, it's like, it's a $1 billion company. So I feel like it's a cop out to not actually go out there and achieve things.
Yep.
And then they sit there and they play victim, and, I could have done this, I could have done that, or I wish I had this. But it's like, if you focus on these key areas of your life and just go, okay, cool, 250K a year, that's more than enough to live a pretty nice lifestyle and be able to spend plenty of time with your friends, your family, be able to do travel, all that kind of stuff. Why can't you do that? That's for me, that's what I'm aiming for. I don't want to build massive businesses, because I want to be present within my family's life and actually be there as a dad for my kids. growing up, love my dad, and he's over here at the moment, but he was building the business, striving to that. He wasn't home that much. And I never really had a strong relationship with him. And for a long time, I did have a lot of anger and a lot of resent towards him. And I've spoken about this many times. Like, it wasn't until I did a really deep meditation and breath work, and I had this vision of me as a little boy, and I grabbed this hand and I shifted into the adult version of myself, and it was my dad, looking my dad in the eyes. And I was just like, I love you, Dad, and I respect everything you did for me, and I'm sorry that I was angry and I had all this resentment. And it was just like this weight lifted off my shoulders. And especially becoming a dad myself, I understand what it takes to put food on the table, to provide for your family. But it's also taking the lessons of, yes, I still want to do that, but be present in my children's life, because that, for me, connection is one of my highest values. And coming back to just finding what you truly value. Because at the end of the day, we're all going to leave this earth, and we may have big businesses, all these material things, but we can't take that with us. It's the memories that we create with our loved ones. That's what stays in people's eyes. They don't care about the money. You know, yeah, you may pass it down in the will, but it doesn't mean anything. So I think that's what is truly important, in my opinion anyway.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I wanted to ask, coming back to that 8-year-old version of you, if he was sitting in this room right now, what piece of advice would you give to him? What would you say to him?
Ooh. I think I just want to give him a big hug and just let him know that everything's all right. Everything's going to be all right. And I think there was other circumstances with my parents and stuff, but I think the big thing was I never felt safe, you know. I never felt held as a kid, you know. Like you said before, maybe I didn't really have the opportunity to be a child. I had to, you know, grow up pretty fast. And it wasn't like I had to. It was like that's just what emerged. You know, so it would... I don't know that it would be any specific advice. It would be just to let him feel secure and held, and that everything is going to be all right, regardless of what happens. Yeah.
Have you struggled with that in your adult life, especially when it comes to relationships, the love and feeling safe within a relationship?
Oh, for sure. And I mean, that's been where a lot of lack of letting people in, lack of vulnerability. These are things I've really had to learn, especially in the last 10 years. That's something that took me a long time to really start to figure out. Even when I had awareness of it, you know, even when I was aware that, okay, I'm not really sharing myself, you know. Even when I was aware, it was still very difficult for me. It's a lot easier now, but it's something that I'm always reminding myself to continue to evolve and get better and to heal. Yeah. I think this thing about healing ourselves is a never-ending journey. It's a never-ending journey. I think there are things that we can heal. I don't know that there's things that we can heal ourselves from. There's things that we can just continue to heal. I think the work is never, when I say the work, the work is never done in that regard. It's not like when people say, I overcame all my traumas. It's like, no, your traumas are still there. You've learned how to work through it and navigate, but you're a human and you've probably carried things from past lives, which is my belief. And there's always stuff to work on. I think that's part of the that's the weird thing about the human condition. I don't know that any human is exempt from these things. And that's the challenge that we have to navigate through this life, is how do we work through those things and do the best that we can to pass on to the next generation. And my kids and your kids, I'm sure, they're going to be telling stories of how we fucked them up, right? And I think that's because they're just going to be better versions. And as time goes on, humans evolve, and their version, their generation, has different needs, and they're going to be living in a very different world than we live in now, certainly that I lived in the 70s and 80s. And when they are young, there's going to be some things that we just don't get, because we can't, as much as we would want to try to put ourselves in their shoes and understand them as best we can, we're different and we're from a different generation. I think inherently there's going to be some fucking up of of that.
100%.
So, yeah.
We're just doing the best with the tools that we have.
Yeah.
And we all have our own wounds. And the way I like to describe it is, if you get a cut, it's going to heal over. You may be left with a scar. It's always going to be a part of you. Yeah. Don't run away from it. Embrace it, because it's a part of your journey. It's made you into who you are today. And there's plenty of lessons that you can learn from those moments throughout your life.
And acknowledging that you're not perfect. Acknowledging that you are going to fuck up. And I think, well, for me anyway, like, part of my whole way of being has been, okay, if I'm not successful in something, then I tend to beat myself up about it. And then there's a whole other thing to deal with, right? It's like, that's kind of unnecessary. Like, that's not the easiest way to move forward, by beating yourself up. So that's something that I have had to learn to do better at.
Monty, we have a closing tradition on the podcast where the previous guest leaves a question for the next guest.
Cool.
So the question for you is, when you look back on your life, what's been your happiest memory?
Great question. There's a lot of things missing from my memory as a kid, and I think there's a lot of things I've just blocked out, obviously. But I have very good memories of being small and being with my grandparents. Like, they were very nurturing. Like, I feel like a soul family kind of thing. And my grandfather, he was, they had their own business, and, they weren't wildly successful, but my grandfather was always learning stuff and trying to teach me. He was the one that got me to read Richest Man in Babylon. And so I'm very grateful for that. So, yeah, he taught me how to ride a bike, taught me how to tie ropes. So I think it's that. And there was a way of being with my grandfather that was very strong and masculine, but it was he wasn't trying to teach me things just for the sake of teaching. It's like he was really trying to nurture me, and it felt like, not like the maths teacher, like, hey, you have to learn how to do this trigonometry thing. It felt very genuine. He had a strong presence, but a softness about him as well. So I treasure that, and I would say that.
Yeah, I can feel that energy and that strong connection that you had with him. Monty, thank you so much, man. This has been an amazing chat. Thank you for welcoming me into your studio here. It's awesome, as I said in the beginning. So thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.